we're going to lead off with some good news here. So I don't know if you've seen this. Texas House actually became the next state in the union to, so the House moved forward a bill that would ban basically all child sex changes in the state. And I think the biggest story is one Democrat broke ranks and voted with it. And she actually said some really, common sense stuff when it came to it. Like, she was like, we've always protected children. Why are we doing something? Why are we changing that now? Mm-hmm. And you've been kind of talking a lot about, like you said, trans issues quite a bit, especially in like your Twitter spaces and stuff, right? So, what do you think the path forward is on the issue?
The path forward on the issue in general is going to be states' rights. So states like Florida, my state, are banning sex changes for children, which is a very normal, moral. This is the way that's right. Like, that is morally and factually the right thing to do, is to ban child sex changes. These children can't consent. They don't know about sex. They don't know about orgasms. They don't understand pregnancy, nothing like that they would understand as an adult, which would give them informed consent to have a sex change. They can't possibly grasp at 12 years old when they're having top surgeries at Boston Children's Hospital or elsewhere. So when it comes to transing children, the way forward would be just a federal ban of all of it. Like, this is disgusting and gross. However, that's not going to happen because of these trans refuge laws that some states are passing as a reactionary knee-jerk reaction to Florida. And that says your child, like my child, if she decided to, could run off to Minnesota or another one of these trans refuge states and have top surgery and get hormones and do all of this stuff, and they wouldn't extradite her. It's legalized trafficking, kidnapping, mutilization, and sterilization of children is what these are. So the way forward, pragmatically and logically, will be strong states' rights. We're going to start to see states, our 50 states, look like 50 sovereign countries with their own rules, their own leaders, their own agendas. And we're starting to see it now. But I mean, if you think 10 years ago when you went to visit Florida, you would go to visit because it's sunny and Disney World's there. But now you're going because the governor is not an authoritarian tyrant, So So we're going to see that. We're going to start to see a separation of that moving forward.
Yeah. And I mean, that was the Oregon bill, like when they were, looking at the Oregon bill, like one of them was like talking about gender affirming care, and they're like, gender affirming care can happen as early as 8 years old and all this stuff. And you're like, hold on.
And you know what else is interesting? What is interesting about these bills that they're passing, the one in Minnesota, for instance, it bans conversion therapy. So if a gay man went to a therapist and said, I don't think I'm gay, I don't know if I'm gay, they're not even allowed to. This is what Dr. Peterson had said. He said, if a gay man came to him and said, I don't think I'm gay, can you help me figure this out? He's not allowed to.
Yeah.
At all. That's how deep conversion therapy goes. It's not just giving you therapy to change your brain. But the fact of the matter is they banned it for adults. So it goes one way. So children, we can trans into the opposite sex or whatever sex they think they are. And adults can't go to a therapist and say, I don't think I'm gay. Can you help me? They can't do it. So those things are banned. And they've also, in a lot of these refuge laws, wrapped an abortion to it as well. Like, oh, you can come here for, an abortion up to 34 weeks or whatever.
The Oregon bill did that. They were debating. That was the headline of that one, was actually on abortion, because kids can come as young as 10 years old, is what they had said, can come to the state, get an abortion without their parental knowledge or consent of it even happening. So basically a crime has already been committed, and they're not even looking into the actual crime that was committed. And that is, the child rape, essentially. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the thing, because they want to shift the age of consent. That's what it's all going to go down to. And whether you want to look at that the global pedophile, whatever that everybody always talks about, but they want the age of consent shifted. So they're shifting what children can do with their bodies. And the limit of consent for a child is what is them reinforcing what cannot be done to their bodies. Like, no, I don't want to take drugs. No, I don't want to drink alcohol. It's not this consenting to be mutilated. It's not consenting to be permanently deformed as a child who does not have that informed consent, Liz. Like I said before, they don't know about adult behaviors that they're going to need these parts for.
No, you're absolutely right. That's the problem. And actually, it is interesting. So Logic Rex says, it surprised me how many adults seem to ignore the fact that kids can't consent. And you're absolutely right. And that's the biggest issue is I always talk about, because we know Marcy Bowers is the president of the World Professional Association of Transgender Health. And she has said that a child who 100% of the times, children that she has come across her surgery desk to have, a vaginoplasty, if they were actually blocked at Tanner stage 2, they're never able to orgasm as an adult. So they're basically consenting to something that they should not, and they do not know what they are consenting to, because they have not, and they should not ever experience that until adulthood, right? And so they're giving up something that they don't even know what it is.
Exactly. And you wonder about when they get old enough to understand what happened to them. And how many detransitioners there are. What was interesting, I believe it was Billboard Chris who shared the information. It's something like that. The center that they closed in, it's Tavistock.
The Tavistock Clinic, yeah.
Yes. So they closed that one down. However, the detransition rate at that clinic was something like 1% to 2%. Okay, because they managed to find a way to because there's a lot of false positives with transing kids, about a 20% false positive. And then, like the studies that said about 88% will outgrow it or were just gay and didn't know until they were old enough to understand what it was. But there's about a 20% here. So there's a lot of false positives, and Tavistock was able to weed out the false positives, and only had this very minute detransition rate because of it, so it's and they closed anyway.
I don't even know about. I don't even know about that. So the detransition rate on any study that they've done is very small. Any study they've done, but the problem is they're not studying it, and so the Tavistock probably has high detransition rates. But for one, if you never show back up at the clinic, they never mark you as a detransition.
That's a good point.
It's a self-report.
They could want to just disassociate entirely from that clinic and never go back there because they were mutilated and they don't trust them. So that's a really good point. I just assumed that they figured out some sort of magic spell. I know that there were some things that they did do different. I can't remember off the top of my head what they were, but Chris had outlined them, and how they counseled, and how they and how long they waited, things like that, or a little bit different.
Yeah, their wait time was a little bit longer there, but that was more of a, I think that was more of a socialized medicine issue, that there were so many new patients coming in that they couldn't handle the patient load.
Socialized medicine
is great.
No,
exactly. It's like, so you wait a year because the socialized medicine aspect of it, and so really what was happening is a lot of these patients that were not really trans were taking away the care from the actual people that had genuine gender dysphoria. And so it's really a conundrum there as well. Like, what do you do? But it is interesting, going back to what you said about conversion therapy, because conversion therapy in and of itself is wrong, the old definition of it. But you're right, they're not really defining what conversion therapy is. And so it's kind of like, what is conversion therapy? What is an assault rifle? What is a woman? Like, the left can't answer any of those things without using circular definitions. And so when they put these bans out on hate speech,
yes, they want to be able to fit anything into that definition that they want, so they keep it as vague as they can. oh no, that
Yeah.
we're going to include this, we're going to include that, and that's what they do.
It's hate speech. I mean, same with hate speech laws. Hate speech laws. What is hate speech? Like, it's, you can ask them this stuff, and it's like they're so vague that they can be like, no, that's covered. And so you're right that even if that's not, the law doesn't ban it for therapists are so worried about that it does that they can't even push back on you know, if you're trans, you're trans, like that's what it has to be. And so I actually think the biggest thing with this is the lawsuits, like Chloe Cole's lawsuit and a lot of the detransitioner lawsuits are going to be in blue states are going to be the best way to go forward, because what those will do is de-incentivize the transition process. It de-incentivizes doctors from pushing this onto their patients because they're going to get sued now.
Yep. I like that. That's how it should be, you know, like consequence, accountability. Absolutely.
I mean, that's again, that's the free market at work. Like, you know, that's what's going to happen. The free market is what's going to change it in the blue states, in my opinion. And that's what lawsuits do.
And it's interesting with the bills too, because it's like, you can convert your body, but you can't convert your mind. You know, like just the way that they're written, and it's just, and they're written like that on purpose, you know, but it's
no, you're right. You are right. Have you seen this though? This came up on the 7th. Let me see. This doctor, I don't necessarily want to play it all, but it basically says, parents are in the way of doctors selecting the right puberty. And that's kind of it, that he doesn't outright say it, but it kind of goes with that.
And I just really want people to understand a little bit more about that. You know, I think a lot of parents get scared when they're, you know, kind of might disclose something, and, you know, looking at this bill, it's like they're so scared that they might be hiding something from them, maybe for good reason, but they're trying to codify it into law. And so we know that they're early bloomers, they're late bloomers naturally. And this is a really well thought out process that we work on in our team. And when we need to be able to have adequate time to assess and address the child's gender identity and experience, and work with them and their families, even families who are having problems. And the goal of that is to make sure that this kiddo goes through the right puberty. And so puberty suppressants, even though not many people get the chance to use them, really allow us the time that we need to induce a late blooming puberty, where we can work together as family with mental health providers, with endocrinologists, and an interdisciplinary team to figure out what's going to put that child on the best trajectory for their life going forward. Because the repercussions of going through the wrong puberty are pretty awful, and unnecessary medical risks associated with major gender affirming surgeries in the future. It's like bilateral mastectomy. If you're forcing people to delay puberty, or you're forcing pubertal development that could be the wrong pubertal development, they may have to have major surgeries. It could also be unwanted and difficult or impossible. Some of these developments get done, like skeletal structure, your hands, how broad your shoulders are. Even the best surgeon couldn't necessarily help fix that. We also have things like voice pitch. So
it's insane to me that he doesn't see that, like, exactly what he's saying is the reason why we shouldn't be doing this, right? Yes. There's no such thing as the wrong puberty. And 2, when you're talking about like the harms of medicalizing, like patients, like Mia Ashton had the piece that we highlighted on here a couple weeks ago, where the person died. The person died in 2016 because they didn't have enough tissue, so they grafted from the colon, and then that caused an infection.
The flesh-eating bacteria. Can you imagine a flesh-eating bacteria from your vagina going up? No, like, this is awful. This is disgusting. And the reason that this happened is because he was given puberty blockers at such a young age that his penis, which I guess you're supposed to invert. I didn't really dig too much into the surgery, but it was a micro penis because they gave him puberty blockers too young.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
so
and it
there
was
wasn't
part of the
enough.
Dutch study that caused it. And it was only because of that, because if you're actually able to grow up and go through normal puberty, it's a much less risky surgery. And so it's really, he's not even like, they're not even looking at what the issues are of going through quote unquote the right puberty for your sex. Like you can't just start a late bloomer puberty at the age of 16 and think that you're going to just grow naturally. You're never going to be natural, right?
No,
And so that's what
from bone density is affected in this. And then study after study, children have weak bones. They're getting osteoporosis when they're 20 years old. Then they did a study in sheep, and now they're just starting to kind of look at people after doing the sheep, while doing everything at the same time, because everything is crazy and stupid right now. The sheep have brain damage from starting puberty blockers too young. Brain damage in sheep, so probably going to be brain damage in children who go through these too. I mean, the puberty blockers were designed for like precocious puberty in young girls, because some girls were getting their periods at 6 years old, and that's also not healthy. So they were given very small doses of the hormones to level them back out again. Anything like this with massive doses of puberty blockers to stop puberty from in a typically maturing child, that's not been studied. So we're going to find out terrible things that happen to our children in 10 years. And those are the ones like the Chloe Coles who are going to be suing. Thank God. I always say that there's no such thing as a trans child, only Munchausen's by proxy, because when some of these children, and right now it's like a rite of passage. It's a rite of passage in the same way being a goth or a skater or, anything like that. It's like
that's
survey was done. Absolutely. Survey was done on parents, and they were interviewing parents of children who suddenly became trans, right? Because that was the thing. It's like the suddenly became trans. And so they interviewed these parents, and it's something like 86% of them all had been spending more time with a trans friend group or on a trans social media site. So there was a lot of influence coming there.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm glad and I bet you're really glad you're in Florida now, because your daughter is a tomboy, right? And so they would be trying to transition your child if you were still in Massachusetts.
Oh yeah, my daughter was targeted hard up in Massachusetts, either being non-binary or lesbian were the two things they were trying to push on her up there. I moved down here within 3 months. She still plays sports, still excellent at them, but I did up her room in pink last year. She's very well-adjusted young lady, and she told me that she felt like she could not be herself because there was a point when we were still in Massachusetts where she felt like she was straying away from tomboy, but they've made tomboy a gender. Tomboy's on the list of the 72 genders.
Oh, Jesus.
So she was being kind of like, she's like, I felt like I had to be a tomboy. Like I felt like I had to stay there because that's what they expected of me. And she came down here, and within 3 months, she was this totally like new person. She's herself. She's blossomed, and it was just going to be nothing but holding her back up there.
It's amazing how much I hear that too. So we did an event. It was me, Chloe, Jeanette from Partners for Ethical Care, and a couple other people on this panel in Wisconsin back in January. And I've heard now 2 stories from that panel where one happened that night. That dad brought his daughter, they left, and the daughter said, "You know what, Dad, the speakers were right. I'm gonna wait." And then I got another message a couple weeks ago where the young girl is doing so good since that event, since now they understand. Ooh. But they're doing so good, and recently went up and gave their mom a hug and said thank you for taking her. And so it's like those types of things. It's like if you can just break their mindset out of this cult, then you'll see changes in a lot of these kids, because we know 88% grow up and grow out of it by the age of 20, and that's really it.
Yeah. Sara, you're changing lives doing the work that you're doing. And I hope you know how grateful I am for people like you and how thankful I am for the work that you do. Like it's very, it's incredible. And I think that trans men and trans women, men and women being the operative word, you're adults, you've been through it, and your voice matters most to these children, because that's going to be their future, you know?
Yeah, and I think so. That's why, like, when me and Chloe, we've been doing a lot. We've got more events coming up here this year, and that's what I think that helps a lot too. You have me on one end and Chloe on the stage at the same time, saying the same things and really pushing it, that this isn't a trans versus detrans or trans issue in and of itself. We shouldn't be transitioning our children. As an adult, you have the right to do with your body as you please, but you know, children are sacred. And that's what the Texas Democrat that stepped away had said. She said children are sacred and we protect them.
Yes, we've always protected them, and this is new what they're doing to not protect them.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.